Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Disclosure Day. When the time is right, everything will become clear. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Nate, and this is our spoiler-free review for Disclosure Day. Full disclosure, a huge thanks to our friends at Universal Pictures Canada for inviting us to watch this movie early for review. If you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast celebrating the world of movies, TV shows, video games, and all things geek-centric. Of course, I am not alone. We are not alone. Joining me for this spoiler-free review, he's a jet setter, a go-getter, and an intergalactic trend setter. He's Justin, the luminous life form Lawrence.
Luminous. I like that. It means I light up, right? Like
you light up the room, every room you walk into.
Bro, that is like the nicest thing you said about me. I love it. Thank you. That is so kind.
Only because you're bumping your head on all the lights on the ceiling. You're so
making them swing back and forth.
I always love when I sit down in a junket and they're like, oh, he's tall. We got to readjust everything. And then they have to like move the mics. And they're like, hey, watch where you're walking. Yeah, watch above your head. Watch where the cables are and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I got it. Don't worry.
And then the shorter person after you is like, oh, geez.
And they have to like shorten everything.
And it's always been the two of them joining us just in time. He's the dematerializing Darcy, the deep space talking, dimension hopping Hudson.
Hello.
Wow. I liked how you used my name as a segue into Darcy. Just in time.
There's a lot of, this movie has there's some synergy, I would say, in this movie is a big deal. A lot of things coming together. But guys, we're here. It's 2026, and Steven Spielberg, the GOAT, is serving up a brand new sci-fi movie. His seventh in the what I would call sci-fi genre, and really his third time tackling aliens with Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977. E.T. the Extraterrestrial in 1982, and then War of the Worlds in 2005. And now we're here with Disclosure Day. Before we dive in, I want to know, of those alien-focused films that I just listed, which one is your favorite? Or, maybe might be a little bit of foreshadowing spoilers here. Is this at the top of your Spielberg alien list? Justin, what do you think?
Well, for myself, this wouldn't be at the top of my sci-fi alien list. I think of those three that you mentioned, War of the Worlds would definitely be at the top there. The legacy of that story from Orson Welles and the fact that Spielberg got to tell it in his own way while still referencing that source material. It's drastically different from the other interpretations of aliens that he's had, because I think it goes obviously harder with the invasion quality of the story, given the War of the Worlds quality. But if I were to think of the messaging that Steven has always seemed to have with these films is really about connection. And I think, if anything, E.T. and Close Encounters are very much his own work to a degree. And I think this film, Disclosure Day, kind of serves as the third in that those stories about connection and about the sort of this idea of understanding one another, which I generally appreciate in terms of like that consistency. I think War of the Worlds is a bit of a outside of the box because it is referencing someone else's source material.
Darcy.
Yeah, I mean, I think E.T. probably stands at the top for the Spielberg sci-fi, but that's just because the whimsy inspired me as a kid when I first watched it. I mean, I feel like any kid watching that wants to find an alien when they go out camping the next time or in the forest or something like that. So just, again, the sense of whimsy and innocence you look at aliens through is refreshing when they're always depicted as usually this threat we need to be afraid of. I like the lighter side of things and the approach where they are the bad guys. Maybe we got to look at ourselves and we're kind of the bad guys type thing. So yeah, I think E.T. stands at the top for me.
Yeah, I think we had Project Hail Mary, earlier this year, and we talked about how lovely it was that, that life out there could be kind to us, and we could be kind to them. But I think I'm with you, Justin. I think War of the Worlds is my favorite of the Spielberg alien movies. I think I like to lean more on the darker side of Spielberg's work than his whimsical side. And that's not to say that I don't like his whimsical side. I do. But I think for me, I just find that like War of the Worlds, like you said, Justin, it's like there are moments that I still remember sitting in that theater and just being in awe of what I was watching. And I think pulling from the whole, like, learning about it afterwards and learning about it, about how it was this radio thing and this Orson Welles thing and how people actually believed it was really happening and just all the history behind it, really, really worked for me. As iconic as E.T. is, of course, War of the Worlds, I think, is at the top for me as well. Let's get to the synopsis for this alien-centric movie, though. If you found out we weren't alone, if someone showed you, proved it to you, would that frighten you? This summer, the truth belongs to 8 billion people. We are coming close to Disclosure Day. Universal Pictures is proud to release a new original event film created and directed by Steven Spielberg with screenplay by David Koepp. The film stars Emily Blunt, Josh O'Connor, Colin Firth, Eve Hewson, Coleman Domingo, and Wyatt Russell. Disclosure Day premieres exclusively in theaters June 12th, 2026. So let's get into this. And I think with a director as prolific as Steven Spielberg, he has a signature to how his films look. A lot of times you can see just a short snippet or a sequence from a Steven Spielberg movie, and you instantly know, oh, this is a Steven Spielberg movie. So, Darcy, let's start there. What did you think of the look and feel of Disclosure Day?
You said it. Like, he has a certain look and feel about every one of his movies, and this one just hammers that home. It's got his style all over it, and it's almost taken to the next level because there's some really creative shots and angle uses, and the way the camera moves through a scene is really engaging. And just again, it's like he's a master of what he does, and he's learned from everything he's done before, and this is just putting it on showcase in this movie.
Yeah, this is classic Spielberg through and through from a visual standpoint. The camera work is, as you were mentioning, Darcy, it immediately stood out to me. There are just so many shots and camera moves that just feel like undeniably Spielberg. The way he frames moments, moves through a scene, builds a sense of wonder, tension, using lighting and shadowing. That's obviously in relationship to the cinematographer. The collaboration that Spielberg had with Janusz Kaminski, you can see that he very much, like, they've worked together in the past, but he has such an ability to understand what Steven is looking for, and it really worked in a lot of ways. I think the lighting is it's so classic Spielberg. There are moments with silhouettes and reflections and blades of lights that move through, even when characters are like standing in awe, and just the way it's lighting their faces and so on. It feels sometimes larger than themselves in those moments, the way it's doing it. And it reminds us, why he has such a distinct look and why his visual identity is so is so memorable. And in my opinion, like, some of his last movies that he's done, it's sort of there in, like, the Fabelmans or West Side Story, or the more recent ones. Like, it's definitely sort of there, but this to me was like refreshing. It was like we were going back to like 80s, 90s, early 90s Spielberg, you know what I mean, to a degree. Like, some of it even felt very Jurassic Park in the way things were lit, and so on.
Yeah, there was a nostalgic vibe to it for sure. It was, even though we had never seen it before, it was cool.
Yeah, I think at the very early parts of the movie, I was worried that it was going to be a bit too visibly dark, but I think they quickly squash that. And I do like how Janice Kaminsky uses like and warm tones and as well as blue tones to kind of shift the actual narrative. Like he's playing into those themes, like you said, Justin. He's working with Steven Spielberg to give him what he wants and to help tell that story through what we're seeing visually. And yeah, I think the way that it sort of syncs up with the different characters and themes is really cool. There's some great action moments, some fantastic camera work, like you were saying. Some of the action moments brought me back to like Minority Report in certain moments as well, a lot in this movie. And I think there's some really fun effects that at times did go the goofy, cheesy Amblin route as well. But yeah, I mean, Justin, you brought up reflections and the way they use reflections almost to like, again, just hammer home the emphasis of what they're trying to get across, the message they're trying to get across in those moments is so well done, and some of the best parts of Spielberg.
I will say that there were like some visual effects hiccups. I don't know if you guys caught it. There was a moment, and this is in the trailer, but there was a car scene and Margaret and Daniel were trying to get off this car on the train. There was a moment where it was visibly not Emily Blunt. Like it was clearly not her, and they must have tried to do some visual effects patchwork, and it was like it did not translate. So there were a couple instances, I think, that the visual effects didn't necessarily stick, as you were mentioning, Nate. They kind of felt a little, like they weren't as refined as they could have been.
Yeah.
But that said, like the tension that you get in these moments and the way it's shot and framed, even going back to the cinematography of it all, it's like, yeah, there's just so many times in this movie where you just find yourself thinking like, yeah, this is 100% Steven Spielberg. You know what I mean? Like it's him to a T.
Yeah, there's like a really great Dutch angle camera shot of Josh O'Connor in a hotel room that really stood out for me when you talk about the lighting and everything working in tandem. But to your point with the VFX, I will say animals are a very important part of this story, more important than I anticipated going into this. And though that was where the VFX took me out quite a bit. And I also do think there is a slight overuse of lens flare. I understand sci-fi, let's have lens flare, let's have fun, and J.J. Abrams the crap out of this, but I just felt like I was like, this is distracting at times.
I will say the animals with the theming of the movie, the uncanniness made sense. Again, with the whole plot of it all. I will say though, the lens flare, there are times where it's like, I feel like we could have toned it back a bit in this one dialogue scene type thing or whatever. So yeah,
it's to add like a sense of visual intrigue, but also like a sense of mystery. You know what I mean? It
can be distracting at times though,
No, for sure. I definitely agree. And I think to the point that you're making, Nate, in regards to like the J.J. Abrams of it all, it's just, he's used it so much that like lens flares have become very much a bit of a shtick of like, of like an effect that you use. And the reality is that I don't know if those are real. It's hard for me at least to tell when they are real. It's usually you get a lens flare like that off of an anamorphic lens where the glass is very much bent and the light is shining into the camera, right? You can get those lens flares and stuff like that. And I think when it happens naturally based on the lens choices, that's when it's really authentic and real. But to the point of what we're talking about, some of it felt like it was like added in and maybe a little overdone at times. And I think everyone needs to be aware of how much lens flares
there's a great Apple TV series called The After Party, and there's a wonderful episode that just kind of, if you get to it, I think it's only episode 2 or whatever. So if you watch it or whatever, it will give you an idea of what it might be like to see some of the lens flare in this movie. I want to bring up the music. I think John Williams' score is interesting because it kind of did what he said in an interview he wanted to do, which was moving away from his more traditional, bold, upfront theatrical sort of thematic style and move to, quote, under the film to gently nudge the narrative forward. And I think he did achieve that. I think being such a big fan of his previous works, I think we the John Williams-ness, we might get to this with the story as well, but the John Williams-ness of it all both worked for me in parts of this movie and then also kind of pulled me out a little bit at times. I don't think it was bad necessarily, but I also don't think that it stood out to a point where it gave this movie more personality. I think all the personality, to John's credit, was Steven, take the reins. Janus, take the reins. Like all the writing, all the lovely writers that probably assisted Steven Spielberg on this. You do you. I'm going to be back here. But at the same time, like part of me was like, oh, but I kind of wish there was like a theme I was humming as I was leaving the theater.
Yeah, I know exactly. I knew that's what you were going to say. Cause like, I think that's what I like about the score. I think the score is absolutely fantastic. It does a great job of just helping to build tension when needed. But it really does shine in some of those adventure sides as well that just feel so Williams and Spielberg collab. You know what I mean? Like there isn't this big theme like a Jurassic Park or that's the first one that's coming to my mind right now. You know what I mean? But in regards
Star Wars, I mean,
well, yeah, I just mean
or
in the sense
any
of,
other
like,
John Williams score. Yes.
Well, like just John Williams in general with Steven Spielberg, right? Like Indiana Jones, right?
There you go.
I get what he's saying by wanting to be more reserved and be in the background and allow the story to speak and allow the music to almost accentuate and guide the narrative. But I still think that he did a great job at that while still also elevating so many moments that just helped to create like a sense of all of the different tones, and we'll talk about it when we get into the story, but all the different tones of the movie, from the sci-fi thriller vibe to the adventure and the sort of wonder and whimsy as well. I think it's all there in its way. But to your point, maybe because of that reason, because of how mixed bag it all is, and it doesn't necessarily stay within a specific style, it's might be feel a little jarring where it's like, well, what is this now, right? And how it's all alternative in a sense, right?
I mean, I really enjoyed the score too. Again, I was kind of surprised to see John Williams did it because it was so different from what I expect to see him or to hear from him, basically. So I do agree with Justin. It did a really good job to move along with the story, and it swelled when it needed to, when adventurous when it needed to. That wonder was cranked up again. It was there for the ride and just served to elevate those moments, like, which again was really cool. And it's neat that he can still do this type of scoring, or he's stepping out to try and do this so late in his career. He's like, why not try something new at this point, or do something a bit different? And I think it really worked.
Yeah. And just, going with what you're saying there, Darcy, it reminded me, it's like, we talked about how much of this is like, a return to form for Spielberg, just in terms of the aesthetic quality. But to see the two of them together, his visuals with this music, it just really carries you through in a lot of ways. So yeah, I just wanted to caveat that. I think it felt like, oh, they're back together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he let Spielberg do his thing, and he let these performances come through. Let's talk about these characters, these actors, starting with Josh O'Connor as Dr. Daniel Kellner. I really enjoyed him in Wake Up Dead Man. I think he proved to be a really great audience vessel in that movie, and I think that's what they were going for with this movie as well. And I think he does it really well. I think I really enjoyed what they gave him in terms of his ability to sort of just focus in on like his nervous, sort of like really very like constantly looking around mentality. The way that he was able to kind of hold down a scene with really not saying too much at times as well was really great. But let's throw it to you, Darcy. What did you think of Josh O'Connor in this movie?
Yeah, I thought he was great. Again, from the first time you see him on screen, you already get filled with the sense of tension he's feeling at the moment, and just continues throughout the thing as he is the vessel for the audience, but he knows more than he did in the last time he was doing it. So it's a different take on the vessel, which is really cool. And again, just the like the way he's using his body, again, he's just way he moves around. You can feel how nervous and how on edge he is, and just like again the way he's looking constantly. Just he really sells the idea of this guy who's burdened with knowledge and is worried that someone's out to get him type thing. He really sold it.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say he's a vessel. It makes sense for the sense of Knives Out, right? To kind of get into it all. I would say he's sort of the anchor point for the audience, in that you kind of relate to him. Like if there's the biggest question with around his character is, if you were burdened with that knowledge, how would you handle it, right? And I think his approach and the way he played it was very, very relatable to, I think, at least for me, at least as an audience member, as I would want to do the same thing as him, and expose the truth, if you will. But yeah, I think he's charming when he needs to be. He's frightened when he needs to be. He nailed every emotion. This guy he is cooking. Josh O'Connor. Everyone loves him. I see why. He it was like this was nothing for him, in the sense of like it was just an easy character for him to embrace and perform. And he has some great emotional moments. He has some great little comedy moments. Yeah, I think he's great. He's absolutely great in this film.
Yeah, he did a great job. I do think, however, I personally was more interested in Margaret Fairchild. Emily Blunt was yet again phenomenal. I think she did kind of steal a lot of this movie, and I wanted to follow and unravel the mystery of what's going on, not just around her, but also directly to her. I think she gave a really compelling performance, and there was a lot of range, like you said, Justin, with Josh O'Connor. I think she also gives a lot of there's comedic moments with her for sure, but then there's also just so many moments where we can really see what she's capable of. And sometimes on the on the flip of a coin, right, we can see how quickly she can transition from one to another, for in terms of emotions. I really enjoyed her in this movie.
Yeah, I think one of the movie's strong points is the fact that like we spend a lot of time with both her character and Josh O'Connor's, because they are so strong and relatable almost in different ways. It's really cool. And like we were saying about Josh, the fact that he had all these opportunities to really show his thing. I feel like you were saying Emily had even more chances to do that with her side of the story, and just the way that she was going throughout this chaotic world, and as news was unfolding to her, it was unfolding for us too. So it was really cool to get that parallel as well. So yeah, I think she was phenomenal. Again, I have a hard time not liking her in a lot of things she's in. So she's great. So
yeah, she's fantastic in everything she does. She continues to prove that she's a powerhouse. And again, the range, like you're saying, Nate, it's unbelievable. She's an absolute standout in this film, and she brings so much emotional, I guess, the emotional human grounding part to this story is really an extension from her, along with Josh's Daniel. But I feel like, she helps sell some of the biggest dramatic moments in a lot of ways. And I think that, yeah, she's great. I wouldn't be surprised if, when Oscar season comes around, if she's nominated. I don't think she'll win, but I think she'd be nominated, because this was a very powerful performance. And as you guys were saying, it's like there's two sort of anchors here that we're kind of tied to, right? I think if you have anything, your reference of a vessel might be more related to Emily Blunt's character than Josh's character, because I feel like Josh was the relatable one for a lot of people in terms of just how you would handle that burden of knowledge. But what is happening and what is going on with I want to say Margaret, yes, Margaret Fairchild is very much something that is a vessel, and you're like, you're in this and you want to understand what's happening. She is the one that you're locked in on, because she doesn't know what the fuck's going on, so you want to know what's going on as well.
Yeah.
Right, so you're like, you want to stick with that story as well.
Yeah, she was really, really good. Eve Hewson plays Jane Blankenship in this movie.
Oh, she was blank. She was very blank.
Reminded me a lot of a younger Rachel Weisz. For me, outside of the more dramatic moments where she doesn't talk, and I don't know if it was on her fully as an actor, or if it was just the way the character was written. I just didn't buy a lot of her line delivery. Like, we brought up Emily, and obviously I don't want to do too many comparisons here, but Emily Blunt, in terms of like, this movie asks you to believe some pretty wild stuff, and when Emily Blunt is involved and delivers those lines, you believe it. But when it comes to some of the moments with Eve, I didn't buy it as much. I think when she's in distress or pain or scared, there's some riveting moments from her. But just in terms of any sort of dialogue delivery, it didn't work for me in this movie.
Yeah, I don't think she was the strongest character. She had some good moments, but in terms of consistency, yeah, I don't know if she was the strongest. I do think though that this is all being revealed to her as well, and I think her character is very much starting to believe, and maybe in that, like, what you might see as a bad performance is maybe her trying to negotiate the thought process of trying to believe or wanting to believe, but she hasn't fully as a character gotten there. I don't know. That might be a bit of a stretch of a justification for her.
I mean, I love that. I just don't believe it.
I will say I get what they were trying to go for with her character. I feel like it was, we almost didn't spend enough time with her, although this movie was very long. I don't know if we need any more time with this movie. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, but what they pose with her character is really cool, and there are times where she really sells that. But I will say that she was not the most consistent part of this film, unfortunately.
Yes, consistency I think is the proper way to describe her performance. It just wasn't consistent.
Yeah, Colin Firth is in this movie. He's a great bad guy. I was saying after what came out of the movie, I was like, I'd really love to see him be a Bond villain one day. And I just mentioned Eve Hewson's character Jane, and there's a moment where Noah Scanlan, Colin Firth's character, is sitting there and just goes, "Hello, Jane," and I heard "Hello, James" because I've been playing 007 so much. But Justin, I want to throw it to you first on this one. What did you think of Colin Firth as Noah Scanlan in Disclosure Day?
As far as antagonist goes, like, it's interesting to see Colin Firth take that on. I think he's still charming, Colin Firth, but he has, I guess, bad intentions or misguided intentions, if you will. Like, I don't necessarily think he is the bad guy, but his character is very much built on a type of villain that I think is more conflicted, and I think that makes him a little more interesting. And it's Colin Firth. You know what's funny though? When I was watching the preview, I thought he was Tim Robbins. Like, you know what I mean? Like, from Shawshank Redemption, because he had the beard, and like, because Tim Robbins
pretty dope.
Is I think they've actually he was in War of the Worlds. Tim Robbins was in War of the Worlds.
He was in the basement
with. Yes, so like,
he was crazy.
When I saw him, like when I saw in the trailer, it's a tight shot of Colin Firth's face where he's biting down on something and his eyes are like twitching out, and I was like, oh man, they got Tim Robbins in this as well. And then I was like, when's Tim Robbins showing up? I'm like, oh wait a minute, it's Colin Firth. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I think he was great. I think again, there's not a bad performance, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna probably talk about two more, maybe one more. But I think everyone delivered, and he understood. Again, Colin Firth knows how to understand his characters, and it's clear that he understood who his character was in this film.
Yeah. Again, he was just playing another person burdened with knowledge, just a different reaction than Daniel's in this movie. So it really made sense. Again, it's really cool to see, again, him step into a more antagonistic role, because he is so charming. He makes those bad moments so much. You want to like him, even though he is doing something wrong, and or he's coming off as doing something wrong as the antagonist. So I really enjoy his performance throughout this movie. I feel like we could have gotten a bit more with him. I don't know. It feels like this movie was trying to do a lot of things, and it didn't really land on all those per se with the runtime it had.
It kind of put its focus in certain spots that maybe it
Yes.
shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I mentioned the line delivery from Eve Hewson, but if you want to talk about line delivery in this movie, Coleman Domingo.
Coleman motherfucking Domingo.
Holy moly, bro! This guy, I think he did such a phenomenal job in this movie. He plays kind of this keeper of secrets as the movie carries forward, and he's kind of always on top of things. And I think Coleman does such a good job of like we were saying, like coming out of this, that Coleman Domingo could also be a great villain and a great Disney villain at that. But also I think in this movie specifically, he carries this character of Hugo with this like hopeful confidence that is so lovely to see in a movie like this, right? And when you think of characters like the character that he is as Hugo, we don't get that too often. We get the mysterious side of things, but we don't get that hopeful side. And it's the Domingo era, and we're all here for it. Darcy, what did you think of Coleman Domingo in this movie?
Again, I think it's great to have someone like this, especially after we just talked about Colin Firth's character. It's like he's the opposite of that in almost every way, and it was really cool to see him do that. And again, I wish you had more time with him. This movie there's so much going on. You wish you could spend more time, but I don't know how we could have done that. Again, he still delivered every line perfectly, I think. And again, I was there for it when he popped up on screen, or if you heard his voice over the phone or whatever. He's just, as soon as he started talking in this movie, that warmth filled you. He's so hopeful, even just in coaching these people through these horrifying or exhilarating moments type thing.
Well, there is a sort of duality that plays out throughout this entire movie, and the fact that like Emily Blunt's character and Josh O'Connor's character, we anchor ourselves to them, and we're following their story. And then you look at Colin Firth's character, and as you guys mentioned with Coleman Domingo, the hope side of his character in relation to Colin Firth's character is sort of a representation of fear. You know what I mean? Fear of what could be. And then, we talked about Jane, and I want to quickly just mention Wyatt Russell, who I thought was absolutely hilarious in this.
He was the funniest part of the movie for sure.
Right. And they're both the opposition of believing. Like actually believing in what is going on,
questioning and stuff,
and questioning, and exactly. So I feel like there are these layers of that kind of are weaved through this film, and they're so perfectly represented by each of the cast, and like you were saying with Coleman Domingo, he has such hope. There's such sincerity. He sort of has this ability to just speak and everyone listens. And that's very much what his character, like the purpose of his character was in this film. And it made perfect sense to cast Coleman in this movie, and it shows in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I want to give one last little shout out from a cast standpoint to Courtney Grace, who, all I will say, plays a news anchor in this movie and gives a riveting reactionary performance. And after looking into it, Darcy, because you were like the first one to say, like, that news anchor was amazing. Like,
yeah,
really
I was impressed. I was a memorable performance.
And I think part of that comes from the fact that I looked it up. She actually used to be a news anchor before she transitioned into acting. So she's drawing upon
that makes sense.
Real experience here. And yeah, I was just, when we talk about like these, lead characters, and then you've got this character that very much is what would, most people would just sort of brush off. It was like, she did a great job. She did a really good job. Let's talk about this story without talking about the story. Again, we are going to keep things spoiler free. I personally think this is where I struggled with the movie the most. But I want to throw it to you two first. Justin, what did you think of the story in Disclosure Day?
Yeah, I think the core story really worked for me. At its heart, this is a film about empathy, understanding one another, and connection, whether human or otherwise. And there are some genuinely powerful ideas of that kind of center around this movie that kind of stuck with me at the end. But that said, this is also where most of my frustration comes from in regards to the story, because there are narrative choices that had me very much scratching my head, and just tonal shifts that don't always feel natural. As I was referencing when we were talking about John Williams' score, like I think he was able to keep up with the variations of tone. And I think this movie moves very quickly through different tones, and it's not always the smoothest. You know, there's also some moments that, where things just seem to work out simply because the story needs them to. And it's like, okay, that's the emblem. And when we walked out, I was saying, like, that's sort of what I expect from Spielberg now. Do you know what I mean? Like, after the years of him kind of being a filmmaker, and I would probably go as far back as like War of the Worlds and so on. Like, he kind of fell into this place of, wanting to resolve things, and in his stories, wanting to really kind of conclude things, but also not necessarily give all the answers to everything else that was surrounding that story. And that's this movie is no different from that. It is that. So I think some of those choices, will be, discussed, and depending on what people think. But despite those issues, like, the emotional core remains strong enough that I stayed invested through. And like I said, like, if you think about the other Alien movies outside of War of the Worlds, I know it's the invasion, it's the war of it all, but if you look at Close Encounters, you look at E.T., and now you look at this film, there is something to be said about how Steven Spielberg looks at aliens and human connection, and I think that's pretty profound.
I have to agree with you there again. Like I said, E.T. was one of my favorites. I do like the lighter side of looking at aliens and interacting with them, and this approach is no different. I have to agree again, though, that the emblem of it all is where it starts to take me out of it, where they do a great job of building tension, and then the tension is resolved very haphazardly and quickly out of nowhere, and it's
jokey, like,
it's a bit hokey and stuff like that. So it's forgiving, like you said. It's Amblin. You kind of come to expect it when you see that attached to a project. It is going to go very superficial at some points to get to the more meaningful and heartfelt story, which again worked for me. It's just, I feel like it could have been tightened up in a few more ways, or maybe focus on some other stuff to keep that tension like faithful or realistic almost. I don't know. Again, it was the whirlwind of pacing and up and down and tone shifts didn't always work for me, and it felt a bit long at times.
Yeah, it felt like this movie wanted to be all of Steven Spielberg's movies at times, right? And I think that was the best part about it, and the worst. Like, I think there's moments, like you were saying, with the whimsy of it all, right? The E.T. I would go so far as to say, like, there's moments that felt like artificial intelligence in this movie. I think there's even moments that did feel a little Fablemans, and I think, the War of the Worlds, the Minority Report come in with the action and some of those elements, and then there's a chase element, like in Catch Me If You Can, like we were talking about, in terms of these like dual sides of everything. But I think, when I think of those movies, and where this one for me personally just felt lesser to what you're all saying, is the pacing, is the dialogue, and the tonal shifts. Like, there were moments in this fan screening that we were in, and the theater was packed. It was also hot as hell in that theater. Please get your air conditioning figured out. But there were so many moments in this movie where, and I know this sounds dumb, and I know I said this to you guys, but like, I in my head, I was mad at people for laughing at certain points, because I'm like, Mr. Spielberg would not have intended you to laugh at this moment. Do not disrespect this prolific filmmaker. But in all fairness, I think it had to do with the fact that there was a lot of moments where people just probably didn't know how to feel in those moments, and then had to sort of come up with something, and you get uncomfortable and you laugh. And it's not that sort of uncomfortable laughter like you'd expect in a horror movie. It very much is sort of a feeling of like laughing at and not laughing with. And so there is that sense of like the way this movie doesn't necessarily know what it wants a lot of the times, and then also doesn't sort of clearly paint that. But Justin, you were saying, like, yeah, the message of this movie is so compelling, right? Understanding where Steven Spielberg is coming from with the Alien movies that we brought up that he's done. There are a decent number of can't take your eyes off the screen moments in this movie. But then there's so many moments where we're kept in the dark with these characters and their motivations. And I think during those moments, I just felt very lost and kind of like I was checking my watch. And I do think that
You were bored.
I was bored in certain in
He yawned
big
a couple
stretches of this
times.
movie. I did yawn. I was.
I thought I did. I thought I did hear him go. Oh.
I don't know if that might have been the person
Wasn't
next
that
to me.
egregious?
That might have been the person next to me who was reacting to literally everything on the screen. But I think I really felt the length of this movie between the confrontations. When we get to the scenes where there's confrontation, incredible. The standoffs, the dialogue, like the speaking between the characters. It's the dialogue and the moments in between that just really took me out throughout the film.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think pacing is definitely something that I don't necessarily think is a strong suit for Steven. I had problems with Fabelman's as well, just being way too long. Same with West Side Story, most recently, like his more recent films. And even AI, artificial intelligence, I thought was a little too long as well. But I do think that this is, you know, the years of this is Spielberg being Spielberg, you know, just like Martin Scorsese is going to be like Martin Scorsese. You know what I mean? He's gonna tell the story that
we're gonna get Killers of the Flower Moon, right?
Yeah, right. Or Irishman, where it's like 4 hours, right? And it's you know, and it's just that is what it is. And I think that's, you know, if people can watch a Martin Scorsese film and have that same sort of opinion and approach, I think it goes without saying, like with Steven Spielberg, a lot of people do have that. It's like he Spielberged this, you know what I mean? And you know, whether for better or for worse, right? Yeah. You know, there's the great parts, and then there's also the frustrating parts.
Yeah. And you can't have the good without the bad. Let's get to our final thoughts and a score on a scale of 1 to 5 levels of disclosure. Darcy.
I enjoyed this one. I didn't really know much going into it other than the name and maybe that first teaser trailer that we saw a while ago. But I mean, Spielberg doing sci-fi I was on board for and intrigued by it. And again, the messaging was solid. It was that approach to aliens that I always enjoy in any storytelling. And the performances really resonated with me across the board for the most part. And then with the issues of the plot and some of the Amblin effects of it, you know, aside, I think this is a really worthwhile story to go see and talk about and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, check it out. If you like Spielberg, you like this one because it's him being Spielberg, just like we were saying. And it was a fun time. I enjoyed it. So this will be 4 out of 5 levels of disclosure.
All righty. Justin, I do want to get to you, but I think you're a little more positive on this movie than I am. So I want to jump in really quick. This movie isn't bad, right? There's a lot to love about it. If you've enjoyed, like we're all saying, if you enjoy Steven Spielberg, you're going to like this movie. It's a Steven Spielberg movie. Great message, good action, elements of Spielberg's signature storytelling that you want from him. The pacing is bad. The dialogue is confusingly rough, and the tones of the film are just a little too at odds for me over and over again. But for all the negative Spielbergisms that didn't work, the moments that do hit. And I am still, you know, thinking after seeing this movie, after coming out of the theater, there are still sequences and scenes, and especially with the lighting and the way the camera work was done, that you know really did hit for me when I think back to it. So I enjoyed my time at the theater. I'm going to give Disclosure Day a 3.5 out of 5 levels of disclosure. Justin.
Well, yeah, I think this movie contains, like I said, some of the best and most frustrating parts of Steven Spielberg's filmmaking. And a friend of the show, Nicholas Jansen, he mentioned this, and I couldn't agree more. But this is very reminiscent of Steven Spielberg's like 2000 era's work, where the films that were messy and uneven and accidentally like kind of make you baffled at the narrative choices, you know, sorry, not accidentally, and occasionally make you sort of baffle you at some of the narrative choices. There's also wonder and heart and ambition and whimsy, like we were talking about. Like it's sort of that clashing of those two. And there are definitely moments where I questioned the storytelling decisions, the pacing, but there were just as many moments where I was completely swept away by like the camera work, the lighting, just the experience of like, wow, this is a Spielberg movie. More than anything, this movie reminded me how much I've missed Spielberg making films like this. If anything, I definitely feel that, and I think the Spielberg magic is still there, and when it hits, like you said, Nate, it hits. And if I was judging this film purely on the script and some of the narrative choices, I'd probably land closer to a 3.5. But the emotion, the sense of adventure, the visual storytelling, and the unmistakable Spielberg touch, just it pushed me higher. So I'm at a 4 out of 5. Disclosures, if you will.
Levels of disclosure. Come on.
Levels of disclosure. There you go.
We're at 5 out of 5 disclosures. That is it for our spoiler-free review for Disclosure Day. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to share your thoughts on this movie or the movies or series we cover, well, let me just have Justin share some secrets that we've been keeping for 79 years. So you can reach out and we can listen.
Awesome. Well, they can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. They can also hit us up on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram and TikTok at wearegeekcentric.
Keep in mind, we have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows, including some spoiler-filled discussions for Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again, Star Wars Maul Shadowlord, and Invincible Season 4, as well as spoiler-free reviews for those series and spoiler-free reviews for Masters of the Universe, Spider-Noir, Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and Project Hail Mary. Plus, we've got some great interviews to check out, like our most recent interview with Oren Uziel, the showrunner of Spider-Noir, where we discuss the 1930s films that influenced the series and its incredible look, the classic noir storytelling, and what makes Spider-Noir feel so different from traditional Spider-Man stories. We've got something a little different as well. We've got a behind the convention-led conversation on our podcast feeds here with the folks behind YetiCon, one of Ontario's most unique convention experiences. We spoke with director Brandon Forder, creative director Angela Forder, and Chief Strategy Officer of Cosplay and Social Community, Saphira Cosplay, about what attendees can expect at this new revamped YetiCon taking place at Blue Mountain Village from June 19th to the 21st. Be sure to check out those interviews as well as all of our interviews, either here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric. That is it for now. We're looking forward to more coverage for Toy Story 5. We've got some interviews coming up. We've got our review coming up real soon. X-Men 97 Season 2. Ooh, boy. As well as a new Spider-Man movie. We got Supergirl. That's all this month. And, of course, more video game coverage and just some great and geeky things throughout the hot geek summer. It's here, it's hot, and it's geeky. So follow along because we are Geekcentric and you can be too. Darcy, Justin, thank you so much for joining me for this disclosed spoiler-free review. And as we say, love ya.
Laters.
Peace.